What's up, One Church? Good to see you all. I want to say hello to everybody here in Gahanna. Everybody over at Northwest, we love you. Everybody joining online. And I believe my mother is online today. So I want to just say hello and wish my mother a happy Mother's Day. This week, approaching Mother's Day, I was thinking a lot about my mom and thinking back on lessons and what I want to share today about her. And so many stories came to mind, but one in particular I just feel like I want to tell. So I think I was about 10 years old, and it was Mother's Day. And on Mother's Day, it was a Sunday, my mom tells me, hey, go take your weekly bath. And so I go in to get ready for church, and you know how 10-year-old boys are, right? Like they take a bath once a week, whether they need it or not, you know what I'm saying? So I go in and go in to take my bath, and I would do something that's kind of embarrassing now, but is what I did. There was a razor in the tub, which I thought was my dad's, but I'm pretty sure what I know now was my mom's. And I would pretend to be a man, and I would pretend to shave. I'd be in there doing the things I'd seen my dad do. And usually my mom would leave the cap on the razor, the Bic razor, but she left it off this time, so I didn't know it was off. And so I started shaving, and I get all the way up. I start shaving up into my head, and I've now shaved huge notches of hair off of my head, and I get out of the tub, and I'm like, so I go get my mom, and my mom's like, hey, we got to shave your head. So she shaves my head, Bic razor, totally, completely bald. And I'm looking in the mirror, and she sees, my emotions going down quickly. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be teased incessantly. I felt like I was ugly. I felt like I looked horrible. And my mom is just like moms do. They can feel what you're doing. And she goes, as I look at you now, you kind of look like Michael Jordan. I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And for me, that will always be the day that I come back to that I learned how to lie. Oh, anyway, I love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. And I'm so thankful for my mom and all the things that she's taught me. I could go on and on. I want to thank my wife also, who is the best baby mama I could ever imagine. I knew after the first day, we started our first conversation in the morning, and we kept it going until about midnight. And I knew after I dropped her off, I wanted to spend Mother's Day with her as often as I could. And so thankful for you. And today I want to jump into the message, and I think it's appropriate. We're going to learn from a mom today. We're going to learn from Mary, the mother of Jesus. We're going to learn not only from something she did, but how she learned. How she learned. I think that's important, not only what someone says, but you observe how do they learn, how do they process and develop over time. So we're going to go to Luke chapter 2. If you don't have your Bible, don't sweat it. It'll be up on the screen. But starting in verse 41, it says, every year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. This, by the way, Passover festival was a cultural thing that pretty much the entire nation went to. Jesus' family were from a small town. They were small town people, but Jerusalem was the big city. So they would make a trek every year from the small town to the big city. It said in verse 42, when Jesus was 12 years old, they attended the festival as usual. I feel like I could build a whole message off of just the words as usual, because nothing's as usual. What do you mean as usual? You can't do anything as usual. It says that Jesus was 12 years old. We know from context, the Virgin Mary, how she even got pregnant with Jesus. It was Immaculate Conception. So Jesus was the oldest kid. We know from the author Matthew that Jesus had 4 brothers. We know that he had sisters, plural. We don't know exactly how many sisters he had, but we know it was more than one. And so they had a minimum of 7 kids. How many did they have by the time Jesus was 12? We don't know exactly, but it was probably a few at least. And so the target's changing. Things are changing. We don't do anything as usual. We have to anticipate what's different this year going to Jerusalem with a 12-year-old than it was last year with an 11-year-old. We keep adding children. We add complexity. And yet they kind of made the mistake, both she and Joseph, of kind of letting life happen to them. And they were doing it as usual, but things changed. In verse 43, it says, after the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth, but Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't miss him at first, because you don't miss the kids at first. It takes time. Because they assumed he was among the other travelers. They assumed They assumed. We could build a sermon out of assume, but we'll keep rolling. But when he didn't show up that evening, it was getting dark out. The sun was beginning to set. They started looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they couldn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to search for him there. 3 days later, 3 long days of not having their son, not knowing where he was and what he was doing and was he safe, they finally discovered him in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking questions. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. His parents didn't know what to think. "Son," his mother said to him, "why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere." "Why did you need to search?" he asked. "Didn't you know I must be in my father's house?" Oh, Lord, help us. But they didn't understand what he meant. Then he returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And his mother stored all these things in her heart. Verse 52, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and all the people. Anybody who's ever had the privilege of leadership and the responsibility of authority has discovered the strange reciprocity that happens between teacher and student. You give out, you pour out, you invest, but something comes back to you. You get something back. And you've experienced that if you've ever been in that position. In fact, I think the best teachers are the most astute students. They learn that over time, as I'm teaching and I'm delivering, I'm also receiving, and they become very keen at picking out the lessons. You'll often hear commencement time, graduation speeches, the senior class will elect a teacher to speak on their behalf, and it's usually the teacher that made the greatest impact on them. And at some point, often with tears in their eyes, the teacher will say something about, I poured my life into these students. I love this class so much. I gave my life. But as much as I gave, they gave me back even more. And great teachers understand that it's the diverse class. It's the class that's difficult. It's the difficult class with the mixture of personalities that teach you the most. It's not the classroom full of virtuosos and meek prodigies that teach you the most. I mean, that's nice. That's nice to have, a bunch of obedient little geniuses that do whatever you ask them to do, but that's not really where you learn your greatest lessons. You learn your greatest lessons with the kids that you look at and you go, this kid's going to change the world. The only question is how. They're either going to be Billy Graham or Bin Laden. And it's up to me to help push them one way or the other. I gotta help figure this out. And so they tap into a skill set you didn't have before. Because there's one thing, you're with all honor students, but when you got a bully or two that you got to deal with, and you got a kid that you look and go, you're a megalomaniac waiting to happen, and you could be a tyrant if somebody doesn't get a hold of your life. At a certain place, you learn how to guide and lead maybe in a way you never have before. And so the teacher gets to the end and they realize, boy, I gave out a lot, but I got a lot back. It came back in return. This is true of teachers. It's true of coaches. Anybody that's leading a team, people that lead a business, and certainly true of parents, that your kids are teaching you. Parents often articulate this. I'm teaching my kids, but my kids are teaching me. The challenge is that when the teacher gives to the student, they usually package it really well. You give it in terms of principles and notable quotables. You get fill in the blanks. You get worksheets. Connect the dots. But when the lesson comes back from the pupil to the teacher, it doesn't come back that way. They don't hand you a worksheet. They don't give you a notable quotable. The lessons, the rich, powerful lessons are embedded in everyday life. They're camouflaged. They're right in front of you, or they're in your peripheral vision. While you're focusing on productivity here and the thing you've got to get done and this time sensitive, there's this really rich lesson going on over here in your peripheral vision. Or as you're looking at the horizon, right up under your nose, you're being taught. And it's so easy to miss. And the reason it's easy to miss is because of the metronome. Okay, this metronome here today is something that musicians use to keep time, to set pace for a song. In fact, you probably, if you've ever noticed up here, our band, they've got stuff in their ears. And actually part of what's in their ears is what's called a click track. And it's a metronome that's keeping them all in sync. And it sets the pace of the song so people don't just get to choose their own pace. We're aligned. And so this metronome creates a speed of life. Your life has a speed. It has a pace that you're functioning at. And as life happens to you, it generally gets faster, not slower. Unless you're tremendously intentional, unless season by season you evaluate and you go, I need to learn to edit my life. I got to either recommit or decommit, because if I just let life happen to me, it's going to get really fast. Life's going to get like more and more complex, and life starts to feel like this. And when life is like this, it's really hard to miss the lesson right under your nose. It's really hard to see anything in your peripheral because I got to focus on, I got to get this done now. It's got to be done by yesterday. I got to go. And it creates a giddy up, like things are going so fast. It's just feels out of control. If you're going to get the lessons in the form that they come now, in this stage of life that you're in and that I'm in, you have to figure out how to reset the metronome of your mind, how to change the speed of life. Because unless you slow it down, you're going to miss this incredible learning that's right in front of you. Now, if I was to have you come up here and go, hey, set the metronome on how you feel, on the speed of life for you, I bet very few would put it here. Like, it's just chill these days, Just kind of wake up when I feel like it. I kind of slow drink my coffee. I kind of slow play the day. Just want to take it as it comes. I bet very few would put it here. If anybody, I would say most of us probably have the challenge and the issue that it's something more like this. Because you not only have your problems you're dealing with, you have problems of the people in proximity to you that they've either superimposed on you, or if you don't jump in and be a part of it, you're going to suffer the collateral damage. So you got to kind of get in on it, and you've got the responsibilities you've taken on, and you've got the things you have to deal with that you don't really feel like dealing with, but you have to, and you've got deadlines, and you've got a job, and you've got a family, and you've got relationships, and you got bills, and you got high stakes, and so these things do this. So how do I have time to be educated? How do I have time to learn the transcendent principle that's hovering in front of me? I don't. I've got to be productive. I have responsibility. I have things to do. When we come into Luke 2, we show up to Mary, the mother of Jesus, and we show up at a time where her metronome was at least humming at here. I mean, it was moving pretty quick. She's got a growing family. They're doing a big trip. We're going small town to big town. And she thought maybe I can keep it here. It's still a lot to handle, but I can do it as usual. But pretty quickly, life happens to her and takes her right down to here. Because it's nightfall and we're not sure where our son is. Anybody seen Jesus? Joseph's like, I don't know, I was supposed to be watching him. They go to the relatives and friends. Anybody seen Jesus? Nobody's seen Jesus. It's getting dark. Of course, in that day, to travel in the dark, they didn't have headlights on their camels. So it was not an easy thing to do. You were more at risk and danger at night. It was a hard thing to do. So they start to realize we don't have our son. And immediately the mind goes here. Like, where's he at? Is he safe? Is he dead? And of course, Mary knows Immaculate Conception. I know the job. I had one job, the Messiah. I mean, if I'm going to lose a kid, it can't be Jesus. It can't be Jesus. I mean, we lost the Messiah, the chosen one. I mean, we could have lost James, and it'd have been tough, but I got over it. Jesus, we lost Jesus. And so Mary probably is feeling a level of ownership herself. She's probably looking at Joseph like, do I have to do everything? I was doing this over here. She's got to be thinking, Jesus, come on, dude. You're the Messiah. You can't keep up with the caravan. I was talking to my wife about, I was processing this message. I was like, honey, I said, boy, I bet Mary, I bet she was really feeling like shame, personal shame. She goes, I wouldn't feel bad about myself. I'd be mad at Jesus. You're 12, bro. You better keep up with the caravan. You're not 10. All right, I get if you're 8, if you're 7, like you're 12 now, dude. You better get on board. You better keep up. You better speed it up, man. Get your quick feet. Stay up with this caravan. She's like, I put a whooping. I'm thinking, whoa, we're going to get lightning strike of it. My wife was getting angry with the Messiah. I had to change the subject. And so the thoughts are going hot and heavy. We're small town people. Our son's lost in the big city. What do we do? Life just got fast, the speed of life. And so you're in a mode when things are it's hard to see any lessons, trying to survive. And so it's within this context that now after 3 days of hunting, 3 days of turning over every rock in Jerusalem, that Mary shows up, and it says in verse 46 that she finds Jesus, it says, sitting among the religious teachers. And what's about to happen for Mary is there's about to be a lesson right under her nose that's almost impossible to get. But it says that he was sitting among the religious teachers. He was listening to them. He was asking questions, and all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and answers. And look what it says in verse 48. It says his parents didn't know what to think. Why didn't they know what to think? It's not that they weren't intelligent people. It's that life was going like this. And when the speed of life ramps up, it's hard to know what to think. What do you do when you don't know what to think? She uses the word frantic in a moment when she goes into scolding Jesus. So like, how could you do this to us? She says, your father and I were frantic. So when you're frantic and you genuinely don't know what to think because life is so fast, what do? How do you learn? And the mystery, the answer to that question is right up under her nose. Jesus, her pupil, her protege, her son, is teaching her. It's right in front of her. Let's take a very close examination of verses 46 and 47. I want you to notice not only what Jesus was doing, but the sequence of what he was doing and when he was doing it. It says in verse 46 that he was sitting among the religious leaders, listening to them and asking questions, and all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and answers. If you're taking notes today, I want you to write these 4 words in this order. Listen, ask, understand, and answer. Listen, ask, understand, and answer. Fortunately, we have Luke, who's the author. Luke was a physician, and Luke is known for his meticulous attention to detail in his gospel account of Jesus. And Luke makes it a point to let us know that before Jesus asked a question, he listened. Notice it doesn't say he asked a question and then he listened. It says he listened and then he asked the question. Because until you've listened, you don't even know what question to ask. And so here is this 12-year-old boy who's the Messiah, who's coming up fast, precocious young boy. And his mom shows up, speed of life, doesn't know what to think, feeling frantic. What do you do when you don't know what to think? And right up under her nose, the pupil's teaching her. And her son is listening before he asks. We live in a day where people are just talking over each other. It's hard to get a word in edgewise. Comment sections are flooded. Arguments with family, marriage, siblings, coworkers, business partners. Everybody's trying to talk over. To listen before you even ask. When you listen, really listen well before you ask, you just ask a whole different brand of question. It's a whole different question. If I plunge right into asking, I'm prone to making a few mistakes with questions. One is, I ask leading questions, which means I've already determined the answer before I ask the question. And so what I do is actually my own experiences can be a pitfall because I think I've been there, done that, but there may be just enough resemblance between my been there and done that and this, what's going on right now, that I think it's the same thing, but it may not be. So I might try to impose my experience on you and it may not be the right thing, but I didn't even listen. I just started asking questions to try to lead you. Have you ever had somebody ask questions that were clearly breadcrumbs trying to get you to go where they wanted you to go? You knew they had already created a conclusion. And so you're like 3 steps ahead because you know where they're trying to take you. And to genuinely listen to somebody, genuinely, authentically, patiently. Because if not, you ask leading questions. Or another pitfall of questions is a zinger question. Ask you a question to zing you and to trap you. Like a lawyer just carefully devising a trap. So then when I ask you this question, I got you. And yet, real progress and real bond and relationship and real growth happens with real questions. And until I've listened, I don't even know what question to ask. Mary doesn't know what to think, but she's not listening. Because it's going, 3 days, I thought, how could he do this? Why would he do this? Is he even alive? And now in this moment, the speed of life is so fast. You know what's interesting is Mary asks a question right out of the gate once she sees Jesus. Look what it says. She says, son, why have you done this to us? Well, that wasn't a question. I mean, sentence structure was an interrogative, but it was really a declarative. It was accusatory. It was scolding. She scolds him. Why have you done this to us? The clear answer is, you idiot. Why would you do this? Why would you be so irresponsible? Why would you be so irresponsible? It's not a question. That's a statement. It's a zinger. And yet here's her son right in front of her. For 3 days, he's sitting among the Sanhedrin. He's sitting among the rabbis. He's sitting among the rocket scientists talking physics, and yet he's listening before he asks a question. You know, maybe that's why in James 1:19 it says, be quick to listen. Train your impulse to listen, especially if your instinct is to speak. He said, if you'll be quick to listen and slow to speak, it'll result in the third thing, which is then it'll actually affect your mood. You'll become slower to be angry because if I'm asking a genuine question, it'll take me to a greater understanding. Question. Somebody asked me this week, what have you learned from your mom and wife? Like, you know, as moms, and like, you know, what lessons have they taught you? And man, so many came to mind. But if I had to isolate one that's been the most profound learning for me from both my wife and my mom, they have a similar quality, that they are skilled supporters. Like they know how to be supportive. And when I say supportive, I don't just mean loyal. I'm talking about they know how to support me in real time. And this is the reason they are so good at being supportive, because some of you have had somebody say to you, you didn't support me. And you're like, what? You've got like 3 or 4 bullet points of proof of like, I did this, and this. And you don't feel supported? Or you've had somebody who did a lot for you and you're like, I still don't feel supported. My wife and mother are skilled supporters because they are skilled listeners. Especially they know when my mouth is running, they can decode and they can tell the difference between when I'm letting off steam and when I'm drawing a conclusion. You have to be a skilled listener to know the difference, because the same words may be coming out of somebody's mouth, but there's a difference between somebody is just letting off steam to where they're actually starting to circle to a conclusion. It's a big difference, but you got to listen well. You know, the mouth is a pressure release valve. You ever feel like you're going to blow up and I just need to go off. I just got to let it out. And so there are times, you know how like a balloon, you blow it up and it's right on the verge of just busting, and you just go and you let it go. It's like, I do that sometimes. I do that sometimes. And I'll just be letting out pressure. And I'm going, this the culture, and I'm angry with what's going on in the world and what's happening out there and what's happening out there. I might be angry at a person, and I'm like, this person, why would they? And so I'm just letting off steam. I'm letting off steam. And they have such keen listening that they can tell when I'm just letting off steam. And when they can tell I'm letting off steam, they'll just let me let off steam. They don't invade my space and start challenging my assumptions. Because when you're letting off steam, nothing's more annoying than when someone starts bringing logic into it. And God forbid, don't you dare get spiritual. All right? Say, maybe we ought to pray about that. You know what? Don't get spiritual with me. Let me burn off a little steam can I be petty? Can I just be petty for a minute? Can I be a victim for a minute? Can I go off for a minute? Okay, can I just be closed-minded for a minute? Let me just It's a pressure release valve, and they can tell, and they don't come in and start challenging my assumptions. They just let him go. They can tell the difference between that in a change of my tone of voice, a change in my attitude, to where I'm starting to actually draw a conclusion that they realize letting off steam's healthy, drawing a faulty conclusion is dangerous. And the faulty conclusion could hurt you and me and everybody, or mess this family up, and could hurt our church and hurt the people we love. And so when they start to see a conclusion that I'm starting to come to, then they support in a different way. Because sometimes you support by listening, but sometimes you support by asking questions. Sometimes you support by giving answers. And to be able to slide in and go, hold on a second now, hold on a second. How do you know that's what she meant? You don't know that. You're assuming that. You're assuming that because that's what you would have meant if you would have said that. But her personality is way different than yours. And she could be feeling the opposite and do something different because you don't see life through her lens. You see it through yours. You assumed that. Hey, you really believe? Hold on, Greg. Here's what I just heard you say. Is that what you meant? Challenging my assumptions. Asking the right questions. But you don't even know what question to ask unless you listen. And so we have to become better listeners to be able to notice the nuance in communication, to be able to know what question to even ask. So Jesus shows up and he's listening before he's asking questions. Until you've listened, you don't know what question to ask. But the second thing too is until you've asked the right questions, you don't have a full understanding of a subject. So let's go back to our list. Let's go back to the linear path that Jesus took, because this is like really powerful, really powerful. This is so applicable. It says that he listened, he asked a question, and then he gained understanding, and then he gave an answer. If you skip any one of those things, you don't listen, you don't ask the right question. If you don't ask the right question, you don't gain the right understanding. So you may be giving an answer and speaking on a subject you've not fully understood. You haven't fully understood the subject, but I'm speaking on it because I just asked one question. Sometimes I got to ask a question, and then I gain a little understanding. And then I ask another question, and I gain a little more understanding. And I ask another question, and I gain a little bit more understanding until I have enough of an understanding to say something, to make a statement, to now give an answer. Because until you fully understood, you won't have answers worth listening to. And so here's Jesus putting on a masterclass on what to do when you don't know what to think, which is what the text tells us was going on in the head of Mary, where she has such a speed of life and the metronome is going so fast, she doesn't know what to think and she's feeling frantic. And what do I do? And here Jesus is saying, here's the progression. Listen, ask, understand, and then give an answer. One of the things I find interesting about the text is in verse 46 and 47, after it says Jesus was listening and asking questions, it says in verse 47, all who heard him were amazed. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and answers. What you understand about the Passover festival is that during a portion of the festival, this is what would happen. It was kind of a spectacle. People would come around so that the brightest minds, the rabbis, the sharpest people would come together and would speak on subjects, hot button issues, debate. They would debate in there. And so it was one of the ways that if you were a rabbi and that was your career, you could elevate yourself. You could make a name for yourself. Like, wow, man, that dude, when he started talking on that subject, he said something we've never heard before. Or he said something so prolific or profound stuff's coming from him. And so this was a thing, like a lot of people were there. And it said all who were there were amazed. They were amazed at Jesus. Because Jesus was listening and he was asking great questions and he was understanding before he gave answers. What makes something amazing? It says they were all, like everyone was collectively amazed. What makes something amazing? Well, things can be amazing for a lot of reasons. One reason is if something's really complex. You're like, wow, the complexity of that is so amazing. But one of the biggest reasons something is amazing is because it's rare. You don't see it very often, you know. That's why right now, in this day we live in, it's hard to really be amazed. We're not amazed as often as we used to be because we're in the information age. And so content, pictures, videos, statements are coming so fast. I mean, you have so much hitting you like all the time. It's not clicking anymore. I wore the thing out. It's coming in so fast. It's hard to be amazed because nothing's rare. 20 years ago, if you went to the Barnum and Bailey circus, it was amazing. Because you saw rare things you had never seen before. So you went to Barnum and Bailey, and they had the bearded lady, and the bearded lady was bending over backwards, twirling a baton in her toes. And it was amazing because it was rare. You had never seen that before. Well, it's not amazing anymore because now you have TikTok. And TikTok has about 1 million bearded ladies. And they can all bend over backwards and twirl batons in their toes, and they can even take it to the next level. They're making French toast out of Hawaiian rolls. To Cardi B. And pop locking in the process. And then you scroll past them, and somebody else is doing the same thing, or they're doing it a little better. And so we're just not amazed anymore because nothing's rare anymore except this. This is rare. This is rare. It's still rare to have somebody listen before they ask a question. It's still rare for a wife or a husband to listen before they formulate their question, to listen at the heart of a person, to listen to beyond the words into where's this coming from, to listen to a coworker, to listen to a family member, to listen to a comment before I get in the comment section, to ask good questions, to broaden my understanding before I just speak on something I don't really know about, I haven't really experienced, I've only observed. And through my observations, I think I have a broad understanding, but I really haven't because I haven't walked a mile in those shoes. And so I talk to not just one person who has, but 2 and 3 and 4, and I start to see pattern recognition, and I start to challenge my assumptions, and I let other people challenge my assumptions before I give an answer. It's still rare. Not just from a 12-year-old, from a 20-year-old, from a 30-year-old, from a 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old that would listen before they ask a question, that would gain understanding before they give an answer. I wonder what would happen to our families if we followed this very simple progression that was right under Mary's nose and is now under your nose and mine. I wonder what would happen to our families. I wonder what would happen to our relationships. I wonder what would happen to our businesses. I wonder what would happen to our culture. I wonder what would happen to our city. I wonder what would happen to our country if people who aren't totally sure what to think, who are living in a frantic day, speed of life, they would be willing to slow down enough to listen, to ask, to understand, and to obey. I got to talk about Mary just another moment, and we got to bring her in the best part of her story because it's bad form to pick on the Virgin Mary on Mother's Day. You know what I'm saying? We got to show you what she got right because we talked about what she didn't get right. Let's talk about what she did get right. It says that after she was frantic and after she scolded Jesus, it says in verse 51, then he, being Jesus, returned to Nazareth with them, Mary and Joseph, and was obedient to them. And look what it says, and his mother stored all these things in her heart. In the NIV, it says that she treasured all of these things in her heart. At some point, this speed was so fast, she could hardly keep up. It was moving. I lost my son. What's going on? And at some point, on the way home to Nazareth, she was able, I got my son in tow. He's not dead. I got this trip now. I got some time. That she slowed it all down. She slowed the metronome. That then she went. And she stored it in her heart. And I believe that you and I, in this day, in moments like this, can go and receive a lesson that's been in the peripheral or it's been right under our nose that God will bring to the surface that's worth storing in your heart. So let's just take a moment here. Why don't you work your way through those 4 things? Maybe for you, you've been making a lot of statements, and maybe God wants you to listen for a little bit. Maybe it's the listening. Maybe God has something he wants to say to you now, or maybe it's not about what God's going to say now. Maybe it's an attitude, a posture, a paradigm shift, a reworking of your impulse to be quick to speak, to go, I'm going to be quick to listen. To listen. Maybe in this moment, it's about asking questions. I've asked a few questions, and I've got a little bit of understanding, but I think I need to ask more questions. I need to ask better questions. I need to ask deeper questions. I need to understand more before I draw conclusions. I'm coming to conclusions. And there may be some things that were true then that aren't true now. Or maybe you knew part of the truth, but you need to know more of an answer. And so maybe today is about God sort of showing that very personally to you where you need to shift so that you can have that understanding. So let's do this right now. Let's slow the metronome and let's listen.